French government has collapsed in a no-confidence vote. After a heated debate in the National Assembly, 331 out of France's 577 lawmakers have voted to oust Prime Minister Michel Barnier in a vote of no confidence. This after he tried to force through a harsh budget to fix the country's gaping deficits. So once he formally resigns, Barnier will become the shortest-lived Prime Minister in the history of modern French Republic and the first to be booted out by Parliament since 1962. South Korean police are investigating President Yoon Suk Yeol for alleged insurrection over his short-lived declaration of the martial law. Yoon accepted the resignation of Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun and nominated his ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Choi Byung-hyuk, as the new defense minister. Yoon is heading towards impeachment proceedings after his ill-fated attempt to impose martial law, with the six opposition parties on Wednesday submitting a motion to boot Yoon from office. It is clear that Yoon's political future is now dicey, whether he resigns or is ousted. South Korea's ruling Conservative People's Party said that he will work to stop the impeachment of South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol. Take a listen.
당 대표로서 이번 탄핵은 준비 없는 혼란으로 인한 국민과 지지자들의 피해를 막기 위해서 통과되지 않도록 노력하겠습니다.
Former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has made her first public address since being ousted in a student-led uprising in August. She mounted an attack on the country's interim leader Muhammad Yunus over alleged persecution of minorities. Hasina said she fled because people were dying indiscriminately. I never even got the time to resign. On its 61st flight, India's workhorse rocket has been tasked by the European Space Agency to launch two satellites that will mimic the total solar eclipse through precision formation flying. The launch of PSLV C-59 Proba 3 satellite mission that was initially supposed to take place on Wednesday was rescheduled following the detection of an anomaly. The satellite named Proba 3 will now lift off from Andhra Pradesh's Sriharikota on Thursday at 4:12 p.m. Indian Standard Time. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar today addressed the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza during the question hour in Rajya Sabha, defending India's defense cooperation with Israel by saying the latter had stood by New Delhi during security threats and that both sides have a strong record of cooperation in the area of national security.
Regarding the two-state solution, we support a two-state solution and we have been public and unambiguous about that. So I think there should be no cause for confusion regarding two-state solution. A country like India, which is itself a victim of terrorism, if we countenance the fact that terrorism is underplayed and ignored, it is not in our interest that we do so. I want to say, as a matter of principle, we, sir, condemn terrorism, we condemn hostage-taking. We do believe countries have a right to respond to these situations, but countries should be mindful of civilian casualties. They must observe humanitarian law, and we would like a ceasefire and an early end to violence.
US President-elect Donald Trump has appointed Jared Isaacman, a billionaire private astronaut, and a close associate of Elon Musk, as the new head of NASA. Isaacman has previously participated in 2 space flights under his Polaris program using SpaceX vehicles and spacesuits for private orbital missions. If confirmed, Isaacman will oversee NASA's $25 billion budget, focusing heavily on the Artemis program. It is a flagship effort to return humans to the moon. The program, heavily reliant on SpaceX's Starship rocket, was originally championed during Trump's first presidential term. Pete Hegseth returned to Capitol Hill in a fight to save his nomination to be Donald Trump's defense secretary. The president-elect is allegedly considering possible replacements amid growing questions about the former Fox News host's personal conduct and the ability to win Senate confirmation. Hegseth met with legislators on Capitol Hill and conducted a radio interview to deny allegations of sexual assault and excessive drinking. Hegseth insisted he was, quote, not backing down one bit, unquote, and that Trump was still backing him. A masked gunman in New York City killed the CEO of United Healthcare, America's largest private medical insurer, in a brazen targeted attack. Brian Thompson was shot outside a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where he was set to attend the company's investor conference Wednesday morning. A man suspected to be involved in the shooting of Brian Thompson was seen at a nearby Starbucks minutes before the attack. 2 children have been wounded in a shooting at a small religious school in Northern California. The sheriff's officials confirmed that the prime suspect apparently shot himself. The wounded students were taken to hospitals in unknown condition after the shooting at the Featherville School of Seventh-day Adventists in Palermo, north of Sacramento. Take a listen.
There were 2 students who sustained gunshot wounds. Both boys, 1-5, 1-6, both attended the school and were in kindergarten. Those 2 children were transported to local hospitals. They are currently in extremely critical condition. They're being treated by the medical staff. I'm thankful that they are still alive, but they have a long road ahead of them, and I would certainly hope that you would all keep them in your thoughts and prayers as we move forward.
A man stole liquor and a knife from a restaurant that used the weapon across the street to stab people in a 7-Eleven store. One person was stabbed in the hand and another person has facial injuries. The suspect was shot dead by Canadian police in a convenience store in Vancouver. The relatives of 43 student teachers who disappeared in southern Mexico more than a decade ago held their first meeting with recently appointed President Claudia Sheinbaum. According to the lawyer for the relatives of those who disappeared, the president offered to rebuild a dialogue that relatives considered deteriorated during the previous administration. Listen in.
Se habló de una nueva metodología. Lo que la presidenta nos dice y coinciden los padres de familia es no entrar a esta polarización en la que veníamos. Si nos entrampamos en esa polarización, pues se va a romper el diálogo. Y la presidenta dice, bueno, yo no quiero que se rompa el diálogo, tampoco los padres queremos que se rompa el diálogo, entonces vamos a construir esta nueva ruta.
Cuba and the United States held their biannual talks on migration on Wednesday. The U.S. side was headed by Deputy Assistant Secretary of the State Department, Eric Jacobstein. This marks the last meeting under President Joe Biden's administration, just before President-elect Donald Trump moves into the White House. Now, U.S. border authorities reported that between October 2022 and December 2024, they encountered approximately 650,000 Cubans. Trump has indicated that he will implement a very active policy against the arrival of foreigners in the country. The US Supreme Court is hearing arguments in just its second major transgender rights case, which is a challenge to a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming healthcare for minors. The justice's decision, not expected for several months, could affect similar laws enacted by 25 other states and a range of efforts to regulate the lives of transgender people, including which sport competitions they can join and which bathrooms they could use. The case is coming before a conservative-dominated court after a presidential election in which Donald Trump and his allies promised to roll back protections for transgender people. The Georgian police detained one of the country's opposition leaders in Tbilisi amid the ongoing protests against the governing party's decision to suspend negotiations on joining the European Union. The Coalition for Change opposition party said that the police raided its offices and detained its leader, Nika Varamia. In a video viral on social media, several officers were seen dragging Varamia into a car. Now, Syrian rebels battled pro-government forces on Wednesday on the outskirts of Hama, a major city in western Syria that has become the latest target of the surprise offensive launched by opposition fighters last week, according to both sides. The Russian Defense Ministry has said its forces launched strikes on Ukrainian military airport infrastructure and ammunition depots. The Russian Air Defense Forces shot down dozens of Ukrainian drones. On the other hand, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces has reported that its forces engaged in over 100 battles with Russian forces in the directions of Kharkiv, Pokrovsk, and Kurakov. They successfully repelled multiple Russian attacks. US President Joe Biden, on his visit to sub-Saharan Africa, has pledged another $600 million for a cross-continent rail corridor project. Biden used this third and final day of his visit to Angola to showcase the Lobito Corridor Railway, where the US and its allies are investing heavily to refurbish around 1,300 kilometers of train lines in Zambia, Congo, and Angola. Biden told the regional leaders that Africa has been left behind for much too long. But not anymore. Africa has the future. Take a listen.
And Africa has been left behind for much too long, beyond that. But not anymore. Africa is the future. I'm not being solicitous. Those of you who've had to deal with me, I've been focusing on Africa since I was a kid in the United States Senate, heading the African Affairs Subcommittee. It is the future, and we have to step up.